Let's fight. Let's fight. I am going to fight you all and kill you. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Fight. This is the show where I take all of your tough questions and terrible takes on anything and everything and fight you fist to fist over the internet. We do this every single month, and I get all of my takes and opinions from you guys over on my Patreon. Thank you, lovelies, over on the Patreon. If you'd like to support me for making videos and content in the future, as well as participate in the next Let's Fight next month, then why not go over to my Patreon, patreon.com/theanimeman, to support me. You get extra bonus content on main channel videos, as well as being able to participate in videos like this as well. Thank you to every single one of you who are doing that. Without further ado, let's get on to the opiniones. Hunter Hooter is worse than Boruto? Alright, I'm not even going to entertain this for a number of reasons. One, everything about this 7-word sentence is just grammatically incorrect. Second of all, you haven't given me any reason as to why you think that Boruto is better than Hunter x Hunter. So, you know, if you're gonna say something, then you gotta back it up with some explanations. And number 3, I don't think you deserve Hunter x Hunter. Japanese curry is mid out of 10. I actually can't disagree with you on this. Now, hold the booze. I have an explanation. Hear me out, okay? We are going to be using the term mid here with the actual definition of what mid means, because the meaning of the word mid has just lost all meaning over the years. Because for those of you who don't know, mid is literally short for middle. An out of 10 rating, it is a 5 out of 10. Look, I like Japanese curry, don't get me wrong, but is it the best curry that I could have? Is it the best version of curry out there? I don't necessarily think so. I will take an Indian curry over Japanese curry any day of the week. But sometimes I have those weird cravings for Japanese curry. Again, not to say I don't like Japanese curry. It's just something that I'm not necessarily craving for all the time compared to Indian curry. But it definitely does have its time and place. And I think that deserves a ton of respect from even those who think that Japanese curry is a mid out of 10. I don't think the Fate series timeline is complicated. And yes, I'm an FGO player. Stop. I'm an FGO player, and maybe I have spent too much money on the game. If I had to take a guess, maybe $2,000. Oh my god. First of all, you are an FGO player that has spent thousands of dollars on this one iteration of the franchise. The one iteration, by the way, which offers pretty much every piece of the overall FGO lore delivered to you in one application. So you are basically saying, hey, the Fate series timeline isn't that complicated. If you study it your entire life and throw thousands of dollars into it, you are basically an expert of Fate. You're a professional Fateologist. You have to understand, though, that so many people out there are not bothered to really dive into the nitpicks of every single piece of lore out there because they might personally just not be that invested into the franchise, and I think that is completely fair. I've watched a good portion of the Fate series. I haven't seen or experienced every single piece of it, so I'm not going to say that I'm like a professional in the Fate series, but I've seen enough to get the basic picture. And even as someone who has kind of, I guess, dabbled in the Fate series and enjoyed a lot of what I have watched in the Fate series, I still have to say that, yeah, the Fate series is kind of convoluted and complicated, especially compared to 99% of other anime and entertainment out there. Obviously, a Kingdom Hearts fan is not going to say that the Kingdom Hearts lore is that complicated because they probably played every single console game, probably played that really shitty rhythm game, and played the mobile app, which is like a prequel to the entire Kingdom Hearts franchise, but somehow the story in that hasn't finished yet. Oh, and has played every single version of The World Ends With You, which is technically not a Kingdom Hearts game, but somehow is still connected to the Kingdom Hearts lore for whatever reason. Nomura's wilding, bro. 90% of new anime that gets a lot of attention early on, Chainsaw Man, ends up being absolute dog shit 6 episodes in. I don't agree with this because I don't think this necessarily just applies to new anime series. I think there have been a lot of anime series in the past that have fallen victim to this, where they really try to hook you in with maybe the first 1, 2, 3 episodes, and then after that they kind of dwindle down, maybe even turn into, say, dog shit, for instance. Look, in the case with Chainsaw Man, for instance, I don't really agree. I think the first season started and ended just as strong as each other, but there are definitely some anime out there recently that haven't really been the same. For example, Oshinoko. I think Oshinoko had one of the best first episodes of anime ever. I know that might be a strong word to use, but it really was that episode that got so many people who were previously not that interested in Oshinoko to really get into it. But the problem there is that that first episode was so good and so captivating that it created just way too high of a standard for the rest of the first season. Look, I don't care if you're like the biggest Oshinoko fan ever, you have to admit that the second half of that first season definitely wasn't to the same quality as the first half or even the first episode. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I don't think this is true for just new anime. There have been a ton of anime series in the past, say like Cuddle the Right Answer, which started off fantastic and ended up kind of being boring. Or look at series like Dead Man Wonderland, amazing first couple of episodes, but has one of the worst anime endings ever. I think it is very, very rare that you will find an anime that is just as strong of a start as it is at the end. And I think that's basically the reason why, even though there have been thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of anime series that have been created in the lifespan of anime, people only remember a select number of them, even those who have watched everything. I think Man Crybaby is overrated at best and bad at worst. The animation is unique, yes, but it's the only good thing I can say is going for the series. The ending especially felt overly edgy, depressing, and overall pointless. Okay, I can't believe I have to come to the defense of Man Crybaby, but here we go. For those of you who don't know, Man Crybaby, recent Netflix adaptation. I say recent because in the context of the Devilman universe, this is very recent because Nagai Go is the original creator of the Devilman manga series, and that manga came out in the goddamn 60s. And you have to understand that, especially when we're talking about how the progression of the story goes, a lot of it basically originated from Devilman, meaning that that ending that you mentioned, it being overly edgy, depressing, and overall pointless, Devilman was one of the first manga series to give us an ending like that. And if you go all the way back to like the 60s and 70s when Devilman first came out, that type of ending was absolutely fucking insane for readers. No one had ever seen a story in manga resolve in the way that Devilman did, and it was incredibly revolutionary and incredibly influential. If you don't know, like, there are tons of scenes and even the entirety of the Neon Genesis Evangelion anime that Anno Hideaki has openly said was inspired by manga like Devilman. So if you don't know about that, then yes, it does seem like the show is like overly edgy and depressing and pointless, because there have been so many shows since Devilman came out that have tried to replicate the ending of Devilman. So you're basically saying, wow, this thing that this anime or series basically invented is like kind of overdone and is kind of boring. Well, yeah, no shit. You have to blame all of the other manga and anime series that basically copied Devilman. Also, that whole thing of like it being like depressing, I don't see why that's a problem. There are plenty of depressing anime and manga series that still end up being really captivating and interesting stories, Man Crybaby being a great example of that. And that whole thing of it being overall pointless, I mean, I hate to sound like the pretentious prick here, but that's kind of the point of the Devilman story. It's this whole idea of humanity trying to fight against this like presence of Devilman and the demise of humanity as a result of people in society who are like this, that basically makes the main protagonist go, oh my god, we were the devil men the whole time. And I think that kind of depressing yet anticlimactic ending is supposed to really give the readers this sense of emptiness, of being like, wow, we thought we were going to be watching this like epic like hero's tale or epic like anti-hero's tale of the Devilman fighting off and trying to protect humanity, and then it does this really complete shift to basically be like, you know what? as cliche as it sounds, maybe we were the enemies all along. And again, you have to understand that although that is a type of storytelling that has been overdone to shit since Devilman came out, when Devilman came out in the 60s, it was absolutely freaking revolutionary. Some people will argue, well, maybe for the modern adaptation, they should have changed that, to make it a little bit more new feeling. But I feel if you get rid of that kind of ending, then it's not really Devilman anymore, and you're kind of completely missing the point of what Devilman even is. But look, I get it. Maybe you're the type of anime fan who doesn't like the depressing stories, doesn't like the edgy stories, doesn't like the more like existential, quote unquote, deep stories, and that's completely fine. If you want to watch anime that are just for fun, no bullshit, no existential, thinking with your neurons type of thing, then hey, that's totally cool, man. I love the Brain Dead series as well. I freaking love slice of life shows. There's nothing to think about shows like that, and I think every single show you watch is valid. As long as you enjoy it, then hey, that's all that matters at the end of the day. The anime of Aohana is better than the manga. The art style in the anime makes me feel more depressed than reading the manga. Depression is obviously a good thing here. See, classic Man Crybaby enjoy. Look, when it comes to this particular opinion, it's certainly an interesting one, certainly a spicy one, and we love spicy takes like this over here. I think the anime version of Aohana got way too much hate, and let me explain why. I think the main reason why a lot of people hated the anime version of Aohana is because it deviated a lot from the original manga's art style. I mean, look at the comparison here, okay? We have the manga version right here, and then we have the anime version right here. Obviously, people are going to look and be more familiarized with the manga version because it is more akin to the classic manga style, whereas the anime version is this very uncanny valley rotoscope type of feel, and that's because the anime itself was actually rotoscoped. The anime did this really interesting thing where they actually got real life actors to play out these scenes, and then in good old-fashioned rotoscoping, they made drawings over it and turned it into an animated piece, which I think was really cool and definitely provided a much more raw feeling, especially for a very dark and depressing story that Aohana is. I'm not going to say that one is better than the other. I actually enjoy both the manga and the anime equally, but I will say that the anime definitely provided a different taste for what the manga provided in, originally with this type of art style, which I think is just as valid as the rotoscoped version of it. I've gotten to the point now where I've watched so much anime that I'm always excited and interested to see anime push the boundaries and do something new. And look, you can call me like hipster and fucking pretentious and everything like that. I don't give a fuck, but that's just how I think about it. I was very, very shocked the first time I watched the first episode of the anime, thinking whoa, this is completely different to the manga. I think the way that it presented itself and the style of animation and art definitely provided almost a completely new experience for me when it comes to the story that I was already familiar with in the manga. And yeah, I think when it comes to, delivering that real depression, it definitely pushed that a lot harder on the viewers with this way more realistic interpretation of the original manga series with really good voice acting, and again, this kind of disturbing uncanny valley feeling that you get from watching this type of animation. Your Name is Freaky Friday and Inception is Paprika. Successful remakes. What can work as an anime and what can work as a live action movie, and your explanations for them? Some for me are Misery and Akira. I mean, first of all, Inception being Paprika is pretty self-evident. It was almost ripped off from Paprika, and this is not the first time that Satoshi Kon films have been ripped off. I mean, there's entire scenes in Requiem for a Dream that was ripped straight from Perfect Blue, and just the story of Black Swan is basically Perfect Blue. Although it is kind of funny, and I've never heard the comparison of Your Name being Freaky Friday. It's pretty accurate. But I do find it interesting that you think that Misery will work as an anime film and that Akira will work as a live action movie. Didn't they try to make an Akira live action movie, but I think the project got dropped because no director wanted to be responsible for potentially a really shitty live action remake? Probably for the best, to be honest. I think we should just leave that film alone. It's perfectly fine as an anime film. Misery, though, being anime, that's really interesting. I would almost be inclined to say that I think it would be quite good depending on what kind of studio does it. And I think a lot of like good horror films out there, interesting horror films, can maybe not necessarily be good anime adaptations, but I think a lot of them can be good manga adaptations. For example, I think a lot of like Ari Aster's films, like say like, you know, Midsummer, would turn out to be really, really interesting horror manga out there if you just get the right artist to really give off that very disturbing yet almost psychedelic feel that the original movie gave. Even something like Hereditary as well, I think would be very interesting as a horror manga. I think a lot of like horror manga can come from decent or good horror movies. They've done that in the past, most definitely, and vice versa. I think one that would be really interesting though is if Murata Yusuke, the illustrator for One Punch Man, doing some kind of like Batman movie or like an Avengers movie. Wouldn't that be the crossover of the century? Akira is the best cyberpunk. Yeah, I guess so. See, this is hard because there are so many good cyberpunk anime out there. It's really difficult to say which one the best is. I mean, look, I fucking adore Akira. It is one of my favorite anime movies of all time, 10 out of 10 in my opinion, and still stands on its own legs to this day. But you can't deny there are some really, really good and influential cyberpunk series out there as well. Look at series like Ghost in the Shell or, you know, the recent Cyberpunk Edge Runners. I will say though that there needs to be more cyberpunk shows. Can we stop making isekais and make more cyberpunk anime? Please, anime industry, I beg of you. Any anime with filler endings where it follows the source material to a certain point and then deviates away from it is just plain bad in general. I think this is a case by case. For example, going back to the previously mentioned Akira, the Akira movie actually has a completely original ending to that of the manga. If you've actually read the manga for Akira, you'll know that the movie only really covers about the first 2 or 3 volumes of a 7 or 8 volume run. But does that make the ending of the Akira movie bad? I don't think so. I think the ending was really, really good and a good way to kind of make a full looped close on the story up until that point. For example, for me, someone who originally watched the movie first and then later found out about the manga, the ending of the anime film actually made me want to go and read the manga. Like when I found out that there was another whole second half of the Akira story that wasn't told in this film, that got me excited, being like, well, if the anime ended in this way, in this incredible, very profound way, then how the hell does the manga end? Safe to say the manga ending is also fucking insane, and everybody should read the Akira manga and watch the movie. It is fucking fantastic. But yes, I do agree that anime with filler endings sometimes can definitely fall flat on its face, especially when it comes to anime filler endings where maybe they've run out of episodes at a certain point because the pacing was really off or bad, and it ends up just being like, yeah, fucking whatever, go read the original source material if you wanted a proper ending, is usually some of the most disappointing anime that I've ever watched. Say, for example, the previously mentioned Dead Man Wonderland, or a great example is like Tenjo Tenge, which was a really, really good manga series that had one of the worst anime endings ever. So yes, if you are going to have a filler ending, at least make it just as interesting or make sense in the overall schematic of the rest of the episodes, like the Akira movie did, or just maybe don't end the anime at that point. Like, I think sometimes it's better to have a cliffhanger ending than a really shitty filler ending. The term nostalgia is being overused to invalidate the qualities of older media over modern. I have much more fun playing games on my old PS2 or Wii than most recent games. However, everyone is quick to say it's just the nostalgia. As someone who is turning 30 this year, I completely get what you're saying, and this is from one older man to another older person, probably. There's nothing you can do about that, because our generation are just as guilty of this for all of the stuff that our parents grew up with or our grandparents grew up with. Only a select few people of every generation is giving the previous generation's material enough credit to basically stop themselves from completely invalidating it because it's old or because it's nostalgic to that person. For example, I grew up listening to a lot of 60s and 70s music that my dad grew up listening to, and I really got into it from a young age, and I find a lot of that music to be absolutely fantastic. Not everything is great, obviously, personal tastes come into play at that point as well, but there are probably a ton of people my age who were also born and raised in a similar household where their parents would play, movies from the 60s or music from the 60s and stuff like that, and thought to themselves, I don't like it. I'm not interested in it. It's old. It's crappy. I'm going to invalidate it. I want to get into all of the new shit, dog. I don't know, man. I just think, hey, man, it's your loss. I wanted to recommend you something that I think is like genuinely good and interesting even in this day and age. And if you don't want to get into it, hey, more for the rest of us, dog. If they want to just play like the crappy modern games that they think are masterpieces, then I think you should just let them do it, because I guarantee when those kids get older, they're going to be doing exactly the same thing that we are doing and feeling the exact same thing that you are currently feeling right now. Every series adapted from Shonen Jump, in particular Shonen Weekly, are overrated. They can pretty much make up a genre by themselves. I'm not saying they're bad, but if you've watched/read at least 2 to 3 shonen series, you can tell there's a formula or elements that will always be there, and it will tend to get predictable after a while. Point being, they shouldn't be goated. They shouldn't be included in awards with other non-shonen series, or they should just be ranked in a separate category called shonen. And people's should keep expectations very high for these series and not try to hype it up even more. Also, comparing them to other non-shonen series is like comparing Ferraris and Lambos to Toyotas and Hondas. The former will always make great supercars, and the latter only make them occasionally. I mean, dude, I get it, but this is kind of similar to the previous take. There's nothing you can do about that, because that's just how humanity works. If we're going to make like comparisons, let's say, the latest Avengers film, and let's compare it to, say, something really art house like Poor Things, for example. Is it fair to compare these two on the same pedestal? One being incredibly popular, making $1 bajillion, and then another one being very, very good art house film, but maybe not a lot of people watched it and doesn't have that mainstream appeal. Sure, it is unfair, but that's just how humanity works. There's nothing we can do about that. Although I will say that I disagree on the point of shonen series, especially Shonen Jump series, being overrated. I think there are a lot of shonen series out there that are perfectly rated, sometimes even underrated. I'm not going to say which ones, obviously, because it'll take me $1 bajillion years to justify everything, and it's just going to cause a flame war in the comments, but if you've watched enough of my videos, you'll know which ones I like and dislike. But point being is that, yes, to people who have watched a lot of shonen manga, or just watched a lot of manga and anime in general, regardless of if it's shonen or not, might start to see a formula that plays out in the way that the story runs its course. But at the end of the day, to a lot of people who maybe aren't as explorative in that medium, there's nothing wrong with that. There is that sense of familiarity that people find a comfort in, and they want to see something that they are more familiarized with. If they think that it's like goated, if they think it's like amazing, the best thing ever made, then let them have that opinion. It's fine. I think their opinion is just as valid as the opinion of some really like super sophisticated, I've watched and read every single manga and anime series out there, and I think all of these shonen series are overrated type of opinion. Look, I'm not happy with it either, but that's just how the world rolls, dog. I genuinely think Part 1 is the best JoJo has ever been. I've watched/read JoJo Parts 1 to 7, but I just think Part 1 is on a whole different level. The character dynamics, story, and background behind Jonathan and Dio is so intriguing and unique, and it was an amazing classic short story. It's up there with other classics like Banana Fish, Berserk, etc. I have mixed feelings about the rest of JoJo overall. Also, Part 9 JoJo Lands is just fucking whack. Wow, what a strong opinion. Okay, first of all, I think it's way too early to say if JoJo Lands Part 9 is whack or not, because there's literally been like 2 volumes that have come out. I've read the first volume of JoJo Lands, and look, it's not my favorite JoJo part, but it's pretty good. I've been enjoying it, and I've been looking forward to the next volume every day. But I think the reason why a lot of people dismiss part 1 is because it is so completely different to how the rest of the series runs. Obviously, this was the point where Araki wanted to write this story, probably heavily influenced by shows like Fist of the North Star, and thought to themselves, you know, I'm going to write a story that is in the similar fittings of Fist of the North Star. And if you really enjoy Part 1 JoJo, I highly implore you to go read Fist of the North Star. It is one of my favorite manga series of all time, and it is just as amazing when it comes to the different points that you said made Part 1 amazing for you. But I think those kinds of like character dynamics necessarily is not the reason why people want to read JoJo. People want to read JoJo because of the epic fights, the epic stand abilities, the absolutely bizarro powers and abilities that these really wacky and wild characters have, and just want to see how absurd a story can go. You compare all of the wacky and absurd story points and characters and progressions of the later parts of JoJo to say part 1, and yeah, it's pretty evident it being very, very different in terms of taste. Personally speaking, I really enjoyed parts 6 and 7 for the exact same reasons that you mentioned as to why you think part 1 is genuinely good, but I'm not going to dismiss part 1 either. Yes, it is very, very different to the rest of JoJo and might not hit all of the same notes and, you know, fire off all of the same neurons that the later parts of JoJo did, but I still think it is a great start to the series and a very important part of the series, especially when you get to parts like, you know, part 8, for example, where references to part 1 and the earlier parts become very, very relevant to understanding and enjoying the overall story. It has been for a while, but the anime community's understanding of nuance and what edgy means has been going down. I still see people on social media praise shows like Elfen Lied for being a masterpiece for its extreme violence and complex story/themes. In reality, it's just superficial depth that takes 5 seconds of thinking and unneeded shock when there's shows out there that outclass shows like this with the same factors. I still think they're fun watches. It's just a weird hill to die on. I totally agree with this, actually. As someone who, you know, grew up watching Elfen Lied at probably way too young of an age that I should have been to enjoy a show like this, I also back in the day thought that Elfen Lied was a masterpiece, and a defying show of anime is not just for kids now, guys. Even older people can enjoy this. I'm 14 and I think this is edgy. But I don't really see the people that you claim here of still praising Elfen Lied as being a masterpiece. If anything, I've seen a lot more people kind of denounce Elfen Lied for being really good at all, to be honest, and I'm definitely one of those people. Now that I've grown up and introspectively I've like looked back on Elfen Lied, I actually recently rewatched some episodes of Elfen Lied not too long ago, just to kind of prove to myself that, you know, I was kind of in a flawed state of mind when of initially judging Elfen Lied for whether it was a masterpiece or not. It is, as you said, not that complex. It ain't that deep, bro. And there have been plenty of anime series that have fallen into this exact same trap. Look at shows like Mirai Nikki or Akamega Kill. These are shows that when they came out, everybody was like, holy shit, this is crazy. This is so like dark and dank, and there are no anime that are doing stuff like this, and it's so deep and But as an adult, you go back and watch shows like this and you're like, this is shit. This is trying way too goddamn hard. It is so try-hardy. It is so almost just offending to anyone with like more than 2 IQ that how did we ever think that these shows were good in any way? I don't necessarily think edgy is losing its nuance. I just think people are starting to realize that the nuance of edgy was flawed to begin with. Samurai Champloo is the best show Shinichi Watanabe has directed, with Sakamichi no Apparon being his second best. Samurai Champloo also has the best OST in all of anime. Okay, I agree with you. For me personally, Sakamichi no Apparon and Samurai Champloo are definitely my top 2, but you can't dismiss his other shows. I mean, you can't dismiss Cowboy Bebop, even though people say like, oh, it's so overrated, blah, 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 blah. It's still a great fucking show to watch with, I would say, an equally amazing soundtrack to Samurai Champloo. Personally speaking, I wasn't that like huge on Carol and Tuesday. I thought it was like a good attempt at kind of bringing like a modern interpretation of Sakamichi no Apparon, but if I had to choose, I'll watch Sakamichi no Apparon any day of the week. But yes, I will agree with you, Samurai Champloo does have one of the best OSTs in all of anime, and if you disagree with that, then you just have shit taste in music. But anyways, that's going to be the end of this month's Let's fight. Thank you to everybody who brought me all of your terrible takes and tough questions. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on anything I said down in the comments below. And if you'd like to contribute to next month's Let's Fight, then make sure to head on over to my Patreon, patreon.com/theanimeman. Any patron of any tier is able to give me their opinions. So find that post on Patreon and give me your toughest takes and weirdest opinions on anything and everything. Doesn't just have to be about anime, it can be about anything really. And I appreciate all of your guys' support, and thanks for watching. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to smack my face right here, subscribe to the channel. Let's keep making big channel number go bigger. Over here next to my head is a couple more videos you can check out if you enjoyed this one. I just hit my mic, links to my social media, as well as again my Patreon to support me directly, and Nonsense, my clothing brand. What sick clothes we have, you can get them at nonsense.jp, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.